It's the greatest podcast in the history of the world.
It goes high up and under the full 40. Becky's taken a ripper!
He has a bounce, he crosses 50, he pins the ears back, and he drills the goal!
All the latest news and views from around the VAFA.
Here's the big man!
The big guy.
He's done it again! This bloke extracts some of the finest!
From outside the arc. It's a long bomb from outside the arc!
This is for the love of the game.
You can tweet that and hashtag it bloody good.
Hi everyone and welcome to For the Love of the Game for season 2026, the award-winning For the Love of the Game. We were very fortunate to win the AFL Victoria Award last year for the best podcast or radio show, and we are back for season 2026 to talk all things VAFA each and every week. Jason Bennett alongside Matty Donald and Brayden May. Gentlemen, welcome.
Jason, Brayden, good to be back. Really looking forward to this year. It's been a long summer, but I'm just about ready to watch some amateur football action once again. I can't wait to sink my teeth into previewing the season in this episode today.
And we see all the other comps up and going, Brayden. It gives you itchy feet. Can't wait for the Ammos to be back.
You're not wrong. It's been an exciting weekend of watching some local footy, but when you know it's just around the corner, and I know the clubs have got the itch as well. Like they're being a bit drawn out this time of year, but they're just ready to get into it.
Almost done with the practice matches, and we're almost ready for the real stuff. Round 1 on Saturday, April the 18th. This is going to be our divisional preview show. We're going to run through all the divisions for both men's and women's in season 2026. The divisional competitions through the VAFA thriving. So many wonderful teams out there, so many great storylines. We'll go through a lot of those today. So stick with us over the next hour or so as we talk divisional footy. And we're going to start, gentlemen, with Division 1 men's football for 2026. Last season, it was a thrilling competition. It was Ormond and Old Peninsula with the two standout teams, Brayden. And while Ormond went through the season all the way to grand final day undefeated, and then Old Peninsula pulled off arguably the biggest upset of the entire VAFA season for 2025 when they rolled them on grand final day.
Yeah, it was a great grand final as well. I think just the experience of Old Peninsula got them across the line in the end, but it was just a great day in general. Like, you even look at the midday show, that grand final was one of the best I've witnessed. I think it did go to extra time in the end.
It did. The reserves, and Ormond won the reserves grand final and then got rolled in the big one.
It was just an awesome day of footy, and one of the great venues as well at Box Hill City Oval before it was redeveloped. So yeah, again, if we get similar storylines this year, it's going to be an exciting competition.
So Ormond and Old Peninsula both go up to Premier C, so they get a taste of Premier football this year. So let's take a look and see who is in Division 1 men's for season 2026. Brunswick will remain in Division 1 men's. They finished 7th last year. They went 6-12.
And Kew, who were one of the victims of Old Peninsula's path to the premiership, they finished third at the end of the home and away table with a 12-6 record, percentage of 131. They did get to the preliminary final, but Old Peninsula were too good for them on the day. A 56-point defeat there ended their season, but still will be one of the top teams in Division 1 again this year.
And then I think one of the wild cards for me is Monash Blues, a young side, new coach in Damien Philpott, come down from New South Wales. You just don't know what to expect from the uni sides, as we'll touch on throughout this episode.
Oakley finished 4th last year. They went 11-7. They stormed home. They won their last 3, snuck into the finals in the very final round with a massive win over Monash Blues. I think it was 123 points from memory. That got them over the line. Unfortunately, their season ended the following week. They lost the first semi-final to Kew, so they'll have plenty to build on Oakley. But there's a big story for Oakley. The Crushers have lost a key man.
Yeah, Luke Ashen, obviously going overseas to play some cricket. He played some Premier cricket with St Kilda this year. He's done quite well in the lower grades. He's earned the opportunity to go overseas and play cricket. Changes up that forward line mix, and it changes up ton watch for us as well.
Certainly does. No Luke Ashen for the Crushers this year. They'll have to find other avenues to goal.
Absolutely, they will. And with teams going up to Prem C, there are teams coming up from Div 2 as well. And one of them is the old Yarra Cobras, who got promoted. They finished first in Division 2. They won the minor premiership, a 15-1-2 record. They got all the way to the grand final. They fell by just 3 points to St Mary's Silesian, but their form during the home and away season and right throughout the finals was strong enough to see them go up a division. So a good challenge for them coming up this year.
Parkside are back in the divisional structure after being relegated from Premier C. They had a great rise through the divisions and just a bridge too far, unfortunately, but one of the exciting things about their pre-season, they're putting an emphasis on the juniors, and they might uncover a few rising stars for the committee as well.
And they had a decent season up at Premier C as well, didn't they, Parkside? They were certainly, we talk about the other team that's going to come back is Paran, who didn't win a game in Premier C after winning the Division 1 flag in 2024. They're now back in Division 1 with a new coach, Paran, as well. So a chance for a couple of these teams who've risen through the ranks, kind of hit their ceiling for the moment, a chance to sort of now just consolidate, find their level, consolidate, get their feet under them again, start winning games and having fun.
And the key thing is they'll take lessons of what it takes to actually be a premier club. It is a big gap to jump up. There's probably a bit more professionalism, higher level of footy, like those sides you play in Prem C, like your Parkdales, the Bo Morrises who have gone up, for example. They're probably just a bridge, the next step up that these clubs do want to aspire to.
Is that the biggest gap, do you think, Brayden, in VAFA men's footy between Division 1 and Premier C, or is it between Prem B and Prem A? I sort of get the feeling it might be that Division to Premier jump.
I reckon it would be Division of Premier, just because, as we touched on, those top sides as well, like they've got some guys that have played Prem B footy. There's VFL lists as well, listed guys in these divisions. But again, you've got to do it the right way. And some of these clubs that have gone up, they've put such an emphasis on the kids, their own talent as well. They don't have to go out and try and poach players. And I think if you get that right over a couple of year period, you're going to solidify yourself in Premier C, and then who knows what can happen.
And Matty, one of the things about the promotion relegation system is you go up, and if you come straight back down, it's not actually failure. What it actually is it's an investment. That 12 months of, and we see it happen right across the divisions in men's and women's, in fact, also in the Premier sections as well. You go up, you find that next level, you learn some things from it, you then drop back down to the level you were at, but you come back with much better equipped, with some experience to hopefully then again go up potentially in 12 months' time and be better prepared for it the second time around.
Absolutely. The worst case scenario is that you've got 12 months of really high caliber experience in the bank. And it's amazing how much players can learn when you just spend a year in a division that's above your level. You understand the standards and the expectations that are required to just compete, never mind succeed at that high level. So for a lot of clubs and players, it will hold them in good stead in the long term, even if it does mean in the short term they've got to suffer that relegation for just 1 year.
And it is an interesting mindset thing, isn't it, Brayden, when you go up, because you might feel like suddenly, obviously, the competition's a lot stronger and it's harder. So your win-loss record, you might have been belting teams in the section you were in last year. You're now coming into this higher level and you might be struggling to win games. You may not be winning any games. So you feel like maybe as a team and as a player, you're going backwards. But in reality, you're actually getting better. It just doesn't feel like it because the standard of opposition and the standard of footy that you're playing is better.
Exactly right. And then we touch on the two sides that have come down. They're probably a bit more relaxed now and they think, oh, we're top of the mountain again. Everyone's chasing us. We're not part of that chasing pack to survive. Like, we'll touch on some other clubs as well. But it just depends on the mindset as well. Like, if you start well, if you say you go your first 4 weeks and go 2-2, you beat some sides around you, you're like, oh, we might do all right here. But if you come out and lose some games heavily, you think, oh, we're out of our depth as well. And it comes down to having that squad as well. You can't just be relying on 22, 23 players. You probably need to go 30, 31 deep to get you through those winter months where you get the telemarine flu, you get some injuries, and you want to rest guys as well.
So Parkside and Paran, the two teams that will come down from Division 1 men's. Preston?
Yeah, Preston, well, they maintained their status in Div 1 last year with an 11-7 record. They finished fifth on the ladder. Yeah, very good record. Hard to fault their campaign. Only percentage cost them a spot in the finals in the end. Considerable percentage. I think they missed out by about 10%. But certainly they'll be up there again, you would suspect, contending for the Final Four in 2026.
And that's part of the building process, isn't it? So Preston have now put a year's worth of investment into that, had a pretty good, solid season in 2025, consolidated themselves in Division 1 men's, and now obviously aim a bit higher.
Exactly right. And they've got some high-quality players that are young as well that we touched on. Like Tom Hill, the coach, excellent forward up top. Then you look at guys that have played some VAFA rep footy as well in green last year as well. So they've got the quality. It's just another 10% out of those younger guys can really take them to another level. And that's where St. Mary's Salesian probably want to look to when they've come up. They've come up with a really young squad, which I think is key. You can go up through the divisions, not just Amos footy, but local footy in general. You can come up with an older group and then those guys they might be 30, 32, 33.
Well, particularly if you win a flag, then they drop off. They say, box ticked. I've done what I set out to do. I'm going to go back and play local footy or spend time with the family.
And that's a challenge in itself. Then you've got to replenish, and it's not always easy. But St. Mary's Salesian, they've got quite a young group, and again, they'll challenge themselves, and they're really ambitious about what they can achieve.
Yeah, they're in a great spot just as a club generally. New coach as well, Heath Chipperfield, former club legend, comes back to the club to replace Clay Tate. So he was involved last year behind the scenes, so they've got some continuity there as well, but a fresh voice.
It makes a world of difference. And I think one of the great things about when you go internally, you only have to tweak one or two things. You don't have to change too much. Obviously, the game plan will have to probably be a little bit more defensive probably coming up because it is a big step from even D2 to D1. So those little tweaks, he might unearth someone. He might switch someone from half back to half forward, throw someone in the midfield, and these players realise that they can do things that they weren't sure of either.
And the final team in this Division 1 men's is UHSVU, who finished 6th last year in this section. They went 9-9, but they won their last 5 games. Again, something that they've come storming home and realised maybe as part of this group has kind of clicked in the middle part of the season, and that would give them enormous momentum and belief into the summer.
Yeah, well, it's funny how sometimes with teams the penny can just drop and suddenly everything sort of clicks in terms of what you've spent a whole few months trying to piece together. I finally just get it working, and that's a great deal of momentum that they can take into the summer and then into this season as well, that they've got themselves playing the way they want, and they've just got to build on that over the summer and lead it into 2026.
So the teams with Division 1 men's, we'll run through them again, and we'll get Brayden's thoughts in a moment as to who he likes. Brunswick, Kew, Monash Blues, Oakley, Old Yarra Cobras have come up. Parkside and Paran have dropped back down. Preston Bull Ants remain in Division 1. St Mary's Salesians have come up after winning the flag. And UHSVU. This looks a pretty stacked division, Brayden.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I think on paper right now, I'd have Paran as flag favourites.
Right.
Just the quality they've brought in. They were smashed by injuries last year. They've got the guys back. The skipper, Rory Brody's going round again. Hearing that Coach Ash Lever talk about him, he's the guy I want to run out for and play alongside, which is fantastic. But yeah, it's going to be super even. Kew, Brunswick in the mix. The Crushers, I think one of the great sayings in sport from a former English Premier League manager is you'll never win anything with kids. That went wrong for him. Let's see what the Crushers have got.
Yeah, exactly right. Division 1, that's Division 1 in the books for 2026. We look forward to that. As we mentioned, round 1 coming up Saturday, April the 18th. We're going to take a break on For the Love of the Game. After the break, we'll talk Division 2 men's. That's next. Welcome back to For the Love of the Game. It's time to talk Division 2 men's, and what a competition this turned out to be last year, gentlemen. St Mary's Salesian played in an absolute thriller over Old Yarra in the grand final and got the chocolates by 3 points.
Yeah, well, anytime you get a grand final decided by a kick, it ends up being a pretty good occasion. A very good competition overall last season, but looking forward to getting back into it again this time.
Yeah, there were some really good teams last year. We mentioned Old Yarra and St Mary's Salesian. West Brunswick and South Melbourne rounded out the top 4. So let's take a look at who's sitting in Division 2 men's for season 2026. We'll start with Aquinas. They went 3-15 last year, finished in 9th position. They stay up, and we'll talk about why in a moment, the restructuring in Division 3. But they get another chance to just consolidate themselves in Div 2.
Yeah, new coach in Josh Quinlan as well. It's a really exciting opportunity. Hopefully this is the year that they can push up the ladder. They've just survived relegation. As you said, some restructures, but previously as well, other restructures. They've been very lucky, but hopefully this is the chance that they needed. New chapter, and who knows what might happen.
Canterbury are one team that are staying up. They finished 7th with a record of 8-10, a percentage of 93.26. So we're looking to climb the ladder a little further in 2026.
Which was a good year of consolidation after, of course, they won the flag in the lower section in 2024.
And they were a red-hot form the second half of last year too, with a lot of young kids that I think they've kept most of them as well. So another year, that gets them to maybe the 35, 40 game senior game mark, which are a really good growth spurt. Touching on the next part is Elstonwick. They've come down again, relegated, like Parkside that we touched on before. Had their rise through the divisions.
Back-to-back flags under Hugo Higginbotham.
Yes, exactly, but they're looking really strong. They've got some guys that played in those flags back as well. I expect they'll be among the contenders again.
Melbourne High School Old Boys, MHSOB, finished 5th in this division, Division 2 last year. They went 9-9. They finished 2 games out of the top 4. So that's the gap for them to now look to bridge.
Yeah, and North Brunswick are one of the 2 teams that are being promoted from Division 3. We'll talk about the other one, I'm sure, a little more in just a moment. They finished 3rd last season, got through to the finals. The great story in Division 3 was that they defeated Wattle Park in the preliminary final by 3 points. That got them through to the grand final. They weren't able to defeat Powerhouse, but the record of 13-5 in the home and away season, percentage in excess of 200. They thoroughly deserve their spot in Div 2 for this season.
South Melbourne District's new coach. I think this time 12 months ago, they started 0-4, and we were saying what a shock this was. They had the quality, but again, they've gone out and recruited really well. I think the Swans, there's a real desperation and hunger just to go that one step further. They've finished top 4 consistently the last 3 years. They're not far away. Maybe the new coach, new game style, it might just change it a little bit.
Terry Penola finished 9th in Division 1 last year. They went 3-15. So they'll drop down to Division 2, and a good opportunity for them to consolidate in 2026 down in D2.
Yeah, exactly right. They've unfortunately lost some key players, including the best and fairest Sean Callender, who's gone to play EDFL footy where he actually came from. But again, they've got a lot of numbers. The kids are coming through, so really exciting. Again, we're talking a lot about the youngsters and what they can do, but John Tate's a really personal coach. I really like him. He speaks well. He's passionate about the club. I think they might surprise a few this year.
And then West Brunswick were one of the contenders for last year. They finished 3rd at the end of the home and away season, 13-5 record. 145% they made, but they were knocked out in the first week of the finals. They lost to South Melbourne by just 3 points, so they'll be looking to go at least a step or 2 further this year.
And then Whitefriars, a team that were impacted by injury last year. A bit of a wild card, I think, as well. And another new coach. I feel like every second club's got a new coach at the moment. But again, I think it's going to depend on the start, whether this new group can settle into a new game plan, and that might determine just how far they go.
And that brings us to our final team of Division 2 men's in 2026, Powerhouse. Long, hard road for Powerhouse on either side of COVID. They'd won just 10 of 63 matches. They found themselves relegated to Division 3 in 2023. They went 6-12 after losing their last 5 matches, continued their growth in 2024, made the finals for the first time in 7 years, crashed out in straight sets, but enter Nick Cox. He'd led Brighton Grammar to 2 APS premierships in 3 years. He was planning on taking a break from coaching after a long and successful career that began in Assumption's legendary team in the mid-80s. They won 59 of 60 games across a 3-year period, an incredible run. Nick spent some time at Carlton, then an A-grade flag at Ormond in 1989, played for Yarrawonga, for Seymour, coached East Perth Colts, and then ended up at Brighton Grammar. And he joins us now, Nick Cox, the premiership coach of Powerhouse. Mate, I'm sure you're glad you came back last year.
Yeah, well, it ended up being a good year. It was a successful one, and it was good fun being back in the community again.
After coaching Brighton Grammar to a couple of flags, you did want to just take a break and have a bit of time off and just catch your breath. What lured you back into coaching straight away?
I'd been at Brighton. I'd been doing the development at the school, and with my good mate Simon McPhee, and who coached Sandringham, St Kilda for a while, and we were both getting a bit tired of it. It takes up a lot of your time and your energy and everything, and I thought I'd just have a break. My business is horses. On racing, so I'm pretty busy most of the day. But I've always enjoyed the footy's always been a bit of it, so I can turn off from the horses for a little bit. So when Cooper rang me, I just thought, it sounds all right. It's nice and close. Like a club that was, pretty well resourced and everything. So, that sort of swayed me a fair bit.
They were obviously on a little bit of a growth curve, and you felt pretty confident early in the season that you had a decent list. That's what everyone was telling you. At what point of the season did you start to work out, you know what, we actually do have a pretty good group of players here?
Yeah, they had really good numbers at training. And those boys were the seconds boys, and my good mate Dean Adams, who is assistant with, was a bit. He sort of said to me, "Is this it?" And I said, "No, it's probably about 20 guys." Not so. He was happy to hear that. But we played a practice game out against in Tarnita, I think it was, out in a team from the Western League, and the boys did pretty well. I didn't really know much about them, but I just thought in that game they showed enough.
Matty Donald here. I'm just curious about the specifics in that match, because we did a feature piece earlier on in the year, and you had your team in the premiership mix right off the gate after that first practice match, which is a very early call. So I'm just wondering what it was specifically about that game that stood out to you as to, we've got what it takes to make a good fist of it this year.
Yeah, Matt, probably the fact that they'd learned, like, the way I'd sort of given them a bit of a game style, how I wanted them to play changed, because what they told me, I'd had plenty of advice, as you can imagine, as a new coach coming to a side that lost both their finals. So some of it was amazing how different it was. But it was the main thing seemed to be, from the guys who seemed to know, was that played a bit of a fast brand of footy that got them into trouble when a team, they were good when they were, but defending was a big problem for them. They really didn't have any idea. And I'd done a bit of work with them the first practice game, and just I saw enough from the senior players, the guys who were going to be, the main players. I saw enough of them sort of, buying into the fact that this is what they probably have to do. Probably the main thing. There was nothing special, like it wasn't a certain player or anything. It was just the fact that they were to be, keen enough to take on a new direction.
It's Brayden here. As you just said, like, you knew you were going to be able to work well with these guys. I think that's something you had to rely on during the season. The few times we spoke throughout the season, post-season, injuries played a real role. This turned into a massive squad effort to get the premiership.
Oh, yeah, it did. I got, after about 4 or 5 weeks of rotating, having 7 or 8 guys miss every week, and I was getting a bit frustrated. And then I just thought, God, what's the point? And then I just thought, we'll have, whoever's available, we'll play them. And I mean, one stage there we had, well, just to give you an example, when we played North Brunswick, who we final the first round, I think we played them in about round 7, and only 8 players who played that day played in the grand final team. So that shows you how much unavailability we had. And I know everyone goes through it, but we didn't get our full team until grand final day. That was our best 22, so we're pretty lucky. It was tough, and I have to thank our Irish contingent because we'd have probably 20 boys on the list for
20,
first and
20,
second.
20 Irish boys on the list.
Yeah, probably more. Jace, probably between 20 and
Wow.
25. We lost probably 5 or 6 this year, from last year that have gone home, and we've probably got another 6 or 8 new guys this year. So yeah, there's a heap of Irish boys there. Because the girls team, they're probably 3/4 of Irish girls who play in the women's team for us, and there's a few boyfriends and girlfriends and stuff there. So they all live around St Kilda. That's where all the Irish teams sort of come.
Wattle Park, pretty early on, sort of shaped as your major opponents, and coming into round 15, you had that blockbuster against them, but they jumped you. They kicked the first 7 goals and belted you in the end by 46 points. I know the players after the game were expecting you to come in and give them a big spray. You didn't. You never gave them that spray. You said, I'm not going to raise my voice or pick on anyone. This is a whole club thing. We need to change what we're doing. You've got to get to training for the next 4 weeks because we're not going to win a grand final playing like we did today. I need your support. I want you on my side. Tell us about that approach, because the old school coach would come in and give the players a rev up and say, this is not good enough. Do you really want to be here, etc. You took the exact opposite approach. Why?
I think I'd actually given them a bit of a whack a few weeks before that. And we played one of the lower sides, and the boys were pretty, it was just a terrible game. And I sort of said to them, even when you play these games, you've still got to, you still got to perform. And the Wattle Park game, we played them early in the season, beat them pretty comfortably. So I wasn't that worried about, them being better than us. But in fairness to the players too, it was a bit of my fault. I rushed back probably 5 or 6 of our main guys back in that day that had been off extended breaks, like injuries and holidays. So they'd missed 6, 7 weeks, some of them. And we looked pretty good on paper, but we weren't really fit enough and, conditioned enough. And that was the problem. The boys, like Wattle Park, just were ready to go, and they just took us apart. And we just weren't, the boys were, because they hadn't played a lot of footy, I think they were just off the mark a little bit. And Wattle Park, they're pretty well coached, and they just sort of, got us early. And it was just one of those days where you just knew you weren't gonna, it wasn't your day. So, I just said to them at the end of the game, it's like what we spoke about at the start of the year, boys. It's about that bit of commitment.
Beat the Animals in the second semi-final, got through to grand final day. Matty, there were so many great stories. It was their best 22. They didn't have an injury that day. Matt Orchitel, a 35-year-old who had the double AC joint break, and he wasn't going to play, and he kicked the first goal of the grand final. Nick, it all just seemed like everything fell into place for you on the way to an 84-point win.
Yeah, it did. I think, in North Brunswick's defence, they'd had two pretty solid games. And, they probably, to most of the people in Division 3, they probably were underdogs going into the Wattle Park game. But they were good enough to beat them on the day. And, I think we were pretty fresh, and they as I said, they had a couple of tough games. And, we got some really good players back as well, not just some handy players. Some guys like Matt Oxtel. He's got a bit of age on him, but he's played some decent country footy and that, and he's a really good little player. And he's just clever. And having him back in the team was a luxury, because I didn't think he would get back. So there was a few of the boys that have got back late and worked hard, and we were lucky enough to get everyone sort of back on the. But they'd also played a few games, like they trained well. It wasn't as though I wasn't going to make that mistake that I made against Wattle Park. I sort of said to them, you're going to have to train, and you're going to have to get a game in before you before you play, and that's what worked out. So it was good.
Nick, there's and on grand final day in any premiership team, there's always 22 really great stories. But I want to talk about the co-captains you've got, Ben Socosta and Luke Stubbs, particularly given that there had been a long sort of period of time where they'd gone without being able to taste finals action, let alone premiership success. And what a great thrill that must have been for both of them to finally get there.
Yeah, it was. Those boys have been around for ages. I mean, you look at on the best and fairest board, and I think those two have shared the last 8 best and fairest between them. They played in a grand final, I think, going back a while, and then they went up and then they went straight back down again and sort of been there ever since.
Really excited moving into 2026 now about what this group can get. If you do get a bit of injury luck on your side, up into Division 2, some new teams, one of the most even competitions in the VAFA structure that a lot of coaches have spoken about this pre-season. What are you expecting from your group?
Look, we're going to have to improve. I don't know how much better it's going to be, whether it's 1%, 5%, 10% better. I'm not sure. We're going to have to improve because we ended up losing 3 really good players, which has been through work, which has been a real blow to us. But we've picked up 3 or 4, and we've got 2 Irish boys that look pretty good as well. So and we've got a good spread of players. We've got a good young players. We've got a lot of guys in the sort of 23 to 25 range. So we've got probably half a dozen of those, and they're all sort of midfielder type players.
Brayden, you've got eyes and ears all over the place, and you heard a bit of mail on the weekend that maybe one of the youngsters who starred last year, Harry Officer, kicked 18 in a game against Ely Park. He was looking pretty good. Is that what you heard?
Yeah, Nick, we're told he lit up the practice match on the weekend. Obviously, we've spoken about last year. He missed some time with that hamstring injury, but we're hoping, watching from afar, when you get kids like this, you hope they can put it together for, if not 18 games, at least 12 to 14 and really showcase their talents. What can you tell us about Harry?
Yeah, Harry was good. He it was pretty wet on Saturday, so there was a lot of rain most of the game, and but he started to take a few good marks later. Later in the match, he's a lot fitter this year. He's looked after himself a fair bit, and he seems to, hopefully he's a lot more durable. I think he only played 5 or 6 games in the home and away season last year, and he sort of only got through about 3 of those for the whole match. He was good, and I think he's going to be pretty important to us this year.
Thanks for your time. Best of luck for the season. We look forward to chatting to you throughout the year.
No worries. Thanks, guys. Pleasure.
Nick Cox, coach of Powerhouse, premiership coach of Powerhouse. Came in last year, Brayden, at this time last year, obviously not knowing anything about the VAFA at all. So this year he's so far advanced because at least he understands the competition. He understands roughly where they're at. Obviously, as he said, they'll have to feel out Division 2 to begin with, but certainly, he's got the group of players and he's just building a layer upon all the education that he did last year. So they're in a reasonable spot.
Yeah, I think the best thing is what he really speaks about with his group is they're really coachable. And I think that's a key word, especially now, that they've got to be coachable. They've got to be willing to learn. I think with the quality that they've brought in, Hitchcock is a seriously good player. His brother is even better. Obviously, he's unfortunately gone back to Perth. If he had have brought him with him, he's got waffle experience. But that big centre-half forward, getting your spine right, especially around some of those kids, is so important. And he speaks about Harry. If Hitchcock can stay fit, that Harry might bob up for 60, 70 goals because he's not going to get the number 1 defender. But
Ton watch, Harry Officer, an early watch on Harry.
But yeah, I'd expect Powerhouse to be right in the mix for the top 4, despite only just being promoted as well.
The Irish connection's fascinating, isn't it, Matty? It really sums up community footy beautifully, and you can understand where it's come from. As you said, you go knocking on the doors of the hostels, and then friends bring friends down, and the thing just starts to grow, and the word spreads, hey, this is a fun place to play footy. Would change the complete dynamic of a footy club. Also makes education pretty important too, because you've got a lot of these men and women who are probably really great athletes. They just need to learn the game.
Yeah, it's amazing how very quickly word can pass around, and then all of a sudden you've got over 20 Irishmen playing for the team at the one time.
There's no Gaelic footy to play, so this is the next best thing.
No, and it's one of the great things about community footy. So many different clubs, and every so often you're going to get a story like this one, which is such a great campaign for Powerhouse and for Nick Cox in 2025.
as we say, a different set of challenges will await them in 2026, but I certainly think they've got the cattle to go a fair way this year.
And Nick's got the best hair in the VAFA, so that helps as well. The voluptuous hair of Nick Cox. We look forward to seeing what he and Powerhouse can do in 2026. After the break on For the Love of the Game, we'll talk Division 3 men's football. There's been some changes, there's been some restructuring. We'll explain it all next on For the Love of the Game. Welcome back to For the Love of the Game. We're counting down to the start of the season, round 1, Saturday, April 18. And we're going to talk about Division 3 men's now. And there's been some changes to this competition. It's gone from being a 10-team competition to a 6-team competition, and we'll explain why. 3 of the teams, in fact, the bottom 3 teams in that Division 3 last year, which was Swinburne, Chadstone and Ely Park. They went 4-14, 3-15 and 0-18. Those 3 teams found it quite difficult to compete in Division 3 last year. Full credit to them for turning up. Ely Park in particular copped some awful hidings, yet showed up every week. They kept on grinding, and the decision's been made by all 3 of these clubs to go drop down and play thirds footy next year. So their senior team will play in the thirds comp rather than play divisional football, Brayden, which I think makes sense. I mean, football, you've got to be able to sell hope, and it's got to be fun at local level, right? So getting belted every week isn't fun. This gives them a chance to drop down, play thirds footy in a nice, even, tight competition, and footy becomes fun again.
And you might attract some people that might not have played in a few years and they just want to have a bit of a kick. And again, they might win some games, more importantly. They'll be in games and they're not going to get to halftime and think, oh, we're 100 points down already. What's going to happen next? The key thing is, I think the club name stands with us still, Matty.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. And this will be a good thing, I think, in the long term for the clubs. And as you say, Jason, full credit to them for fronting up last year, because that can't have been much fun at all to be rocking up knowing that a big defeat was on the cards more often than not. So full credit to them. But I think for the health of everyone, this is going to be a good decision going forward.
So Chadstone, Ely Park and Swinburne will all play thirds footy in 2026. Their senior teams will play thirds footy, which leaves us with 6 teams in Division 3. Let's run through those now. We're going to start with the Albert Park Falcons. They finished 6th last year. They went 10-8. But, Brayden, they had wins over Wattle Park and Boxall North. A couple of good wins in that lot for the Falcons.
Yeah, we got excited towards the end of the season that they might sneak into the 4. I think they were eyeing even North Brunswick or Richmond Central spot that we'll get to in a sec later on. But, yeah, I don't know what happened. They just fell away. But, again, if they can do something special under the new coach, they'll be right in contention.
Box Hill were one of the teams that you mentioned there. They finished 5th in the end, an 11-7 record. They missed the finals by 2 games in the end, so there was a bit of a gap in between the top 4 and the rest in 2025, but they'll be looking to make that break into the top 4 this time around.
Hawthorn are the only demoted side from Division 2 after the restructure. A new coach as well, Declan Foote, ex-VFL player. They're going to look to just invest in what they've got. They've got a great off-field program that we've spoken about before. So
yeah, really the Wings program,
which is such a key part of footy now. And as well, if you have a strong culture, I think that's going to drive you towards success.
So that's Hawthorn. Latrobe University finished 7th in Division 3 last year. They went 6-12. So again, like a couple of these other teams, mid-ladder, that sat them a fair way off the pace. They were the best of the rest beyond the bottom 3 there. So the gap now for Latrobe, that's what they're going to be focused on, trying to close down.
Yeah, and Richmond Central, who finished 4th, gives you a bit of an indication on how strong the top 3 was. A 13-5 record, percentage of over 200, only good enough for 4th. And the first week of the finals was where their campaign ended. They lost the semi-final to North Brunswick by 38 points.
They're an exciting team last year, Richmond Central. Of course, they had Jake Dillon on Tum Watch, kicking lots of goals in the reserves. They just got there was a lot of publicity, there was a lot of excitement, there was a lot of exposure, and that was fantastic for a little club like Richmond Central's to really make a name for themselves out there in the public.
And I guess what they'll want to do now is turn that into premiership success and really add to that and hopefully attract more players as well. But
Rezzies won the flag last year, didn't they? They knocked off Powerhouse from memory, and Powerhouse, I think, were 19 and zip coming into the grand final. So there's obviously a bit of talent around at the lower level.
Exactly right. It's just a matter of whether you might be able to convince these guys to play some senior footy. They might have jobs. It depends on every club. But I think if Richmond Central are to contend, they're going to have to go through Wattle Park. Right now, I think they're the premiership favourites. Got a really good group. They've got the core together last year. Again, we don't know what the uni year might bring. It might bring some talent just out of the bush. So I think the Animals are the key team to beat at the moment.
They'll have some unfinished business, won't they, when you sort of think about how 2025 finished for them?
I think so. Like, as Nick Cox spoke about, that they did beat Powerhouse during the year and it laid a bit of a marker, but then Powerhouse got stronger. But it would just burn away over the summer. I think that losing in that fashion to a side that I think we consider a 2-horse race for most of the season.
So 6 teams in Division 3 men's. The VAFA opted to go with that setup. We could have gone 8, 8 and 8, but that would have upset Division 1, Division 2 and Division 3, and there would have been teams that qualified to be promoted that wouldn't have been able to be promoted, etc. So, and teams would have been relegated, etc. So we decided to go this way. Division 1 and Division 2 stay intact. Doesn't impact them at all. We have a 6-team Division 3 competition that really should be quite competitive and exciting. And then, as I mentioned, Chadstone, Ely Park and Swinburne will play thirds footy in 2026. All kicks off Saturday, April the 18th. Round 1, looking forward to it. That is men's divisional footy for 2026. Lots there to look forward to this season. After the break on For the Love of the Game, we'll talk divisional women's. That's next. Welcome back to For the Love of the Game as we count down to round 1, Saturday, April the 18th. It's time now to talk divisional women's football. We've got 5 divisions of women's footy this year, teams everywhere. We've got clubs coming up with second teams, even third teams at senior level as the VAFA women's competition continues to build and explode with extra players. It's a wonderful thing to see clubs getting those extra numbers and now actually being able to create some depth. As I say, a lot of clubs now have got 2 teams. Some have even got 3.
Exactly right. And I think the key thing is when you get such a large group of players, you can place players where they're better suited. So if you're new to the game, you never played before, you can play in the lower grades against people against your ability, and it keeps you interested as well.
The other exciting thing that's happening in the women's comp, we'll talk about it a little bit more in detail next week, is the under-19 women's competition coming in for the first time to the VAFA, which is going to give kids that are coming out of junior footy and school footy a stepping stone to get to senior football in the women's comp, just as they have in the men's. We'll talk more about that on the show next week. We're going to start here with Division 1 Women's for 2026, Brayden. And one of the teams that's popped up, they've risen up to Division 1, a great new challenge for Old Kerry.
Yeah, the Panthers. What an exciting time it is for this football club across its men's and women's programs, actually. They're doing some great things. They're coming off the back of a Division 2 prelim, so you would expect them to be right in the mix with a lot of promoted sides as well. Marcelin,
another team that's playing Division 1 football. Last year, they've actually dropped down. They played Premier B last year. They went 5 and 10 in 7th spot, so you'd have to think coming down to Division 1, they're going to be competitive.
You would hope so, and it would make it really exciting for them. Hopefully find their footy a bit more consistency in performance, and the gap between their best and worst footy might close as well.
One thing that is noticeable in women's footy and worth mentioning compared to the men's comp, Matty, is the labels between sections. You can see teams that can jump up a couple of sections in a year or drop back. We're still in a phase of women's footy. It's growing and expanding so quickly, and team lists are changing so much year to year that it is possible for a team to go and jump 2 sections and be competitive, which we don't see in men's footy, which is a lot more sort of stable and settled. But with women's footy, there is this ability to, say, go from playing Division 2 and suddenly you find yourself in Premier B.
Yeah, and that just adds to the excitement and the drama of it all, that things can change really dramatically and within a year or two. So it is always makes it very important to keep an eye on exactly what's going on from one season to the next.
And from a Premier perspective, Premier Women's perspective, Brayden, we've changed the rulings around reserves. To previously play Premier Women's footy, you had to have a reserves team. We've got rid of that now because what we're trying to do at VAFA HQ is basically build a pecking order from Premier Women's all the way down to Division 5. Where do clubs actually sit in the overall pecking order? So we'll get rid of that reserves requirement and just try to even things out. But it takes years to do it. It takes regrading every season, and eventually over time, this will all settle in as it has in men's footy.
Exactly right. And we've spoken to some coaches throughout pre-season, and they do say that the list does change. They don't know what they're going to get during the pre-season because there's work commitments, family commitments, and it can all change so much. And I think the key thing with that change is it allows the best teams to go up and play in that top tier.
So we've spoken about Old Kerry, we've spoken about Marcelin, Monash Blues also in Div 1.
Monash Blues, yes, and they finished second last season with a 12-4 record at the end of the home and away season. They got all the way to the grand final. They fell 21 points short against Glen Ira Old McKenna. So you can expect that they'll be right up there again this season.
Oakley probably like their chances as well, Matty. They finished third last season, so one after another. So it'll be interesting to see how they go this season.
One of those teams that has jumped up a couple of sections, as we just spoke about, is Ormond. Last year, they finished runner-up in D3, Division 3. They were 13-3, and that was the grand final and went all the way to extra time. And it was an outstanding game of football up against St Mary's Salesian. Both those teams are actually jumping from Division 3 to Division 1, and we would expect they'll be very competitive.
Yeah, rightfully so. And when you come up as a premier, St Mary's Salesian, as we touched on with the men's sort of stuff, when you come up a division, the mindset has to change. So it'll be interesting to see how they adapt, especially against the likes of Powerhouse and Whitefriars too.
Second year as Terry Burt as coach. 250 games he played for the club. His dad was a legend, played 350 games. Terry commutes down from Bendigo, returned to the club that he loves and has been home his whole life. He grew up around St Mary's Salesian, won the flag last year, just one of the great stories of the VAFA. Now they get a chance to defend it, but at a high level.
And what I love, he's coming back. Like some coaches, and understandable, so much blood, tears, sweat, everything. It's the same, but it happens. 4-hour round trip at least 3 times a week. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, they signed him mid-season last year before they won the flag. They were just so pleased with what he was doing, and he was so pleased in being involved. He's got his dad involved. Ex-players have come back and been involved in the program because Terry's involved with it. It's just been a wonderful cultural thing for that football club. So, as you mentioned, St Mary's Salesian and Ormond both up to Division 1 in 2026.
And Powerhouse, they just missed out on the finals in the end. They had an 8-8 record over the course of the season, a percentage of just over 103. They only missed the finals by a game in percentage, so they weren't that far away from qualifying for September in the end, and they'll be looking to do so this year.
Some very good teams, aren't there, in this Division 1? There was last year as well. Whitefriars was one of those. They're back in Division 1 again this year. They finished 4th. They went 9-7 in the regular season, did Whitefriars, and got to finals time. Knocked over Oakley by 9 points in the first semi-final before falling 7 points short of Monash Blues and a grand final. They are in Division 1 once again. So we take a look at the overall Division 1 team. Let's run through them from top to bottom. Old Carey, Marcelin, Monash Blues, Oakley, Ormond, Powerhouse, St Mary's Salesian and Whitefriars. Let's talk Division 2 football. Roll straight on over and we'll start to see some of the second teams, the reserve teams that will be playing. And the first one of those is Beaumaris. Beaumaris' second team, their reserves team, will be playing in Division 2. Their seniors will be in Premier B. Their second team will be in Division 2.
And then there's actually a third team here, Jay. Caulfield Grammarians, one of the big teams in the Premier Division with their senior and reserve side will make up this section as well.
Yeah, so their seniors team will play in William Buck Premier Women's, of course. Their reserves team will play in the Premier Reserves comp. And then their thirds team, which is great to see that they've got such depth in their program now, will play Division 2, as you mentioned.
Gives you a bit of an idea on how cutthroat the nature is of promotion and relegation. We talked about Powerhouse in Div 1. They won one game more than Hampton Rovers, and yet Hampton Rovers are going down to Division 2. A 7-9 record for the Rovers, percentage of 114. So even their percentage was better than Powerhouse, but they find themselves down in Division 2. You would expect if they maintain the sort of form that they showed last year, Brayden, that there'll be every chance of going straight back up.
You would think so as well, and it's one of these things. There's a lot of movement as the lower we get down, a lot up, a lot down. So, again, I think we'll probably need 4 or 6 weeks to work out where everyone sits.
MCC remain in Division 2. They were there last year. They finished 10th. They went 4-10. So an opportunity for MCC to build upon their 2025.
Old Camberwell, they're one of the teams that have gone up, and in their league last year, they got to finish third at the end of the home and away season, 12-4 record, percentage of nearly 300.
Yeah, wow.
So they were very comprehensive. When they won big. They nearly got to the grand final. They fell just 4 points short in the preliminary final.
Old Yarra Cobras, their second side will compete in this division with the Cobras senior side in Premier B.
Yeah, so Premier B seniors for Old Yarra Cobras and their reserves will play Division 2. Richmond Central have dropped down from Division 1 to Division 2. They finished 8th last year in Division 1. They went 6-10. They'll play Division 2 football in season 2026.
And rounding things off, UHSVU, they made the finals last year. They finished 4th in the end. They got to the semi-final. They lost by just 6 points.
Quick break, that is Division 2. Beaumaris second team, Caulfield's third team, Hampton Rovers, MCC, Old Camberwell, Old Yarra's second team, Richmond Central and UHSVU. That is Division 2 women's for season 2026. After the break, we'll talk Division 3 on For the Love of the Game. Welcome back to For the Love of the Game. This is our divisional preview show for season 2026 and we are talking women's divisional football. We are up to Division 3. Always a hotly contested competition. And this year, there's quite a bit of changes at the bottom end here from Divisions 3, 4 and 5. A lot of changes. There's 4 teams that have dropped back down. There's a couple of teams that have been pushed up. We're going to start with Albert Park. The Albert Park Falcons are in Division 3. They were last year. They finished 4th. They played finals. They went 10-6 last year. They'll find themselves in Division 3 again this year. And you would think, off the back of playing finals last year, they'll be competitive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You think there'll be every chance of featuring right at the business end of the season again. A few teams have come down from Division 2, and one of them is Brunswick. They finished 8th in Div 2 last season, a record of 5-8, but a percentage of 96. So even in their defeats, they weren't being beaten by a lot. You would expect that they're every chance of going right back up again, Brayden.
Yeah, De La Salle is going to be in that mix as well, a 6-6 record. They finished 6th in Division 2 and they've come down. So again, based on what you think, you come down, you're going to be competitive. So hopefully they are in contention.
Another one of the feel-good stories in the VAFA women's competition is the continued growth of Fitzroy's women's program, one of our great community clubs. Their third team will be playing in Division 3 this year. They've now got 3 women's teams up and going, which is fantastic. Their seniors will play William Buck Premier Women's again. Their reserves will play Premier Reserves, and then their thirds team will play in Division 3. So a great story for Fitzroy, a program that just keeps on growing. We know what a great junior community club they've had, and that feeder program now, it is just filtering through to their seniors, which is wonderful.
That's fantastic. And when you think of it, isn't it amazing that inner Melbourne, just the inner north, it's growing. It's probably not an area where you would expect footy to really grow in terms of numbers.
Exactly right. And look, again, you build a great program, and we'll talk to Danny DiStefano at Caulfield Grammarians next week about this because they're going through the same thing. They've got 3 teams as well. You build a great program, it just attracts people. People are prepared to drive from other parts of Melbourne or from the country to play in a great program at a good level in a good comp.
It doesn't matter what happens behind us out on the field. It's so much more what happens at club rooms and your Thursday nights, your meals, your gatherings for social functions, what they offer and what you do together as a team because you make lifelong friends at footy clubs.
Yeah, so Fitzroy's thirds team will play Division 3 football in 2026.
And then another team that is going down from last year to this year is Hawthorn. They finished 7th in Div 2 with a record of 6-8 and a percentage of 98. So we talked a little earlier about Brunswick, but Hawthorn's record was even slightly better, and they're going down as well. So we've talked about there's going to be a host of teams that you think will be vying to bounce right back up. Yeah, this is going to be a really, really close competition. There are going to be very fine margins separating a bunch of these teams at the top end, Brayden.
Especially when you touch on Mazenod, they finished 5th in this division last year with a 10-6 record. They must be looking at these teams coming from above and thinking, I've got a point to prove against you.
Yeah, exactly right. And as we say, look, the gap between women's footy and sections from year to year can be so volatile depending on, massive list changes and things. So it's going to be fascinating in the early rounds to see how all these teams shake out and where they sit in the pecking order. Old Haileybury, they're one that have dropped down from Division 1 last year, so they've dropped down 2 divisions. They finished 9th in Division 1. They went 3-13. But now, as we say, a chance a couple of divisions down to get to a level that they're comfortable at and start to build and start to get some positive momentum, win some games and start to really invest in their program and build from the ground up.
And given what we've said a couple of times already through these divisional previews, is that things can change very quickly for any team, regardless of the division that they're in. So we'll keep a very close eye on it, but it would not take much for them to go up again.
And Port Melbourne Chargers, the other team in Division 3, it's their seconds team. So their main team will play, their seniors team will play in Premier B. Their seconds team will play in Division 3. So Division 3 teams, in summary, Albert Park, Brunswick, De La Salle, Fitzroy's third team, Hawthorn, Mazenod, Old Haileybury and Port Melbourne Chargers second team. That is a stacked comp. That's going to be a great competition to keep an eye on. Division 3 in 2026, which leads us, of course, into Division 4. One of the teams that has dropped down a couple of sections, so they'll be really competitive in Division 4, you would think, is Aquinas. They finished 9th last year. They went 4-10 in Division 2. This year they'll play Division 4.
And another team that's come down is Canterbury, 6th last season, a record of 6-8, a percentage of 97 again. So even in their defeats, they're not losing by an awful lot either. So a very competitive campaign from them last year.
Glen Eira, Old McKinnon's second team will feature in this division as well, with the Griffins to be in Premier B for their senior side.
Yeah, so like a number of those teams, they've got the split. They'll play seniors Prem B, and their reserves team will play Division 4. The Muggers, Melbourne Uni Women's Football Club, they were in Premier B last year. They had a tough time. They started in Premier Women's, dropped down in regrading to Premier B. They went winless 0-15 in Premier B. They've dropped down to Division 4. Such a proud, successful football club, this one. An opportunity now for them to really go back to basics and build a foundation in Division 4 and just really stabilise, as you say, what is one of the great women's football clubs in Australia.
I think that we can determine 2026 as a success already because the name still exists. Because clubs can get into these situations and they can fall in a hole and you just lose them, unfortunately. It's a lot of work to the committee, the coaching staff, the players, just to regroup, and hopefully they have a successful year. And hopefully, I'll be cheering for them to win a premiership. Hopefully,
Division 4, the Muggers in 2026.
Another team that's going down is North Brunswick, who in the division up, they finished 7th last year, a record of 7-9. Percentage of nearly 118. I know I feel like I'm repeating myself a bit going through these teams and how competitive they are, yet they're still getting relegated. And thhere another side that will be looking to jump right back up as well, Brayden.
Well, that's clearly a great sign. Percentage is a great detail in just how competitive you are. If you're getting relegated with a percentage of 40, it's probably a great thing you're going back. But if you're going down with that percentage of 100 or near 100, it probably goes to show you've got a point to prove as well that you shouldn't have gone down. But Old Zavs, they'll have their second side in this division as well, and their senior side will play in Prem B.
Yeah, so exactly the same as a couple of those other teams we've talked about, like Glenara, Old McKinnon, the Premier B Division 4 split. Ormond as well, their second side will be in Division 4. Their main senior team will be in Division 1 for Ormond, so they will play Division 4 football in 2026.
And the final team, Wattle Park, who have also gone down, they finished 6th last season, percentage of 122, which even surpasses North Brunswick, and a record of 7-9 as well. In the 16 games they played, they conceded just 215 points last season.
Good
Their defence
defensively,
was outstanding, so that will hold them in good stead coming into this season as well.
Something to build on, that's for sure. So that's Division 4 for season 2026. Aquinas, Canterbury, Glenara, Old McKinnon, the Muggers, North Brunswick, Old Zab's second team, Ormond's second team, and Wattle Park. That is Division 4, which takes us to Division 5, our fifth division. And isn't it wonderful to have 5 divisions of VAFA women's football?
Yeah, no excuse for not having lack of options when it comes to watching football in the amateur divisions this season. There's going to be a lot to keep an eye out for.
So the first team in Division 5 will be De La Salle's second team. Their first team, their senior team, will play in Division 3, and their Resis will play in Division 5.
And then Elstonwick, they've come down. They had a 2-13 record last season, percentage of 37. So an opportunity for them to consolidate themselves and work to build themselves back up again.
The Monash Blues will have their reserve side in this division, and the players in this team will be looking to break into the senior side that will play in Division 1.
Parkdale Vultures played Division 1 last year, but they went 1-15 and finished in 10th position. So they've dropped all the way down to Division 5. Bit of a rebuild for them. But again, an opportunity just to get a bit of fun back into the game and be out there and be competitive and build their program from there.
Parkside introducing a seconds team. Their first team got promoted to Prem B this season, which is a terrific story for them. And now they've got a seconds team running around in the 5th division.
Then we'll have a combined side of Paran Collegians. I love this initiative. It means the club names don't drop off the women's program. And I think more clubs will probably look to do it as the stretch for players goes on. But yeah, it'll be exciting to see how the combined side goes.
So at the end of 2024, Collegians who had a women's program were trying to get a second team up. In the end, the whole thing fell over and they didn't have a women's team at all. They dropped out of women's footy last year. They hired Amelia Peck as their head of women's football, and they've built a program back up now. And as you say, they're going to merge with Paran and put a combined outfit out there in 2026. They're going to play in Division 5. We wish them all the best, as we do for Preston Bull Ants, who were in Division 4 last year. They finished 8th with a 5-9 record. They'll play Division 5 footy in 26.
And South Melbourne coming down from Div 3. They finished 8th in that competition last year. A record of 3-13 for them and a percentage of 31.8.
And then the final club in our preview, West Brunswick, their third side, one of our favourite clubs in the women's program. They offer a great footy club, and it's great to see them have a third side to round out Division 5.
Indeed it is. As we said, there's an under-19 women's competition that is also being launched this year, which is a fantastic initiative and something very new for suburban footy anywhere in Australia. In fact, it might be the first one ever. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail next week, which then, again, just provides more options for teams to get more and more players in and make sure they don't lose any along the way from their feeder clubs and their junior clubs and their school clubs. So we'll talk a little bit more about under-19 women's next week. That wraps up our divisional preview for season 2026. Thanks for sticking with us. There's a lot to get through. There's so many wonderful clubs. We've mentioned all of them. We can't wait for the action to begin. Round 1, Saturday, April the 18th. We'll be back next week with more for the love of the game each and every week. We'll bring you all the usual segments, ton watch, tips, the whole thing. It's back bigger and better than ever in season 2026 with Matty Donald and Brayden May. I'm Jason Bennett. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week for the love of the game.